Welcome and thank you on today for joining me for another edition of the Living Water Church of God Devotional. I am our Lord's King, and I'm thankful that you can join me for this time once again in the Lord's principles. Today, I want to get right into the Word of God once again, and I want to address a subject that really makes me think. And the subject on today is titled Hearing Determines Response. Hearing determines response. Today, as we're going to the Lord's principles, I will go into Luke chapter 8 and read from verse 18. The scripture reads, "Take heed how you hear, for whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken even that which he seemeth to have." I thank God for his principles on today and thank him for this word because hearing truly does determine response. The Lord, he encourages us and he is admonishing and strongly advising us. Pay attention to how you hear. Pay very close attention because what you hear determines response. It makes me think about how out of our different senses that we have for us, seeing, smelling, touch, taste, hearing is so powerful. And you can lose your physical sight. You may lose maybe your taste. You may lose even the ability of touch and all of these things. But being able to have that sense of hearing, not just the physical sense of hearing with our ears, but also the Lord is addressing, we need to be able to hear with our spirit man. We need to be able to hear what he is speaking into our lives by his spirit and by his word. Because if we truly hear what God is saying to us and how he is speaking in our lives, then we will be able to respond to the voice of God. We'll be able to respond to what the Lord desires out of our life. And I cannot think of a person today when you are communicating with a person, when you are holding a conversation and you're talking one on one with a person, or maybe you're talking with a group, and you are trying to convey and maybe just share what is on your mind, maybe what is on your heart. And you notice that the other individual, or maybe the individuals, are totally ignoring what you have to say. Well, it makes you feel some kind of a way, and it kind of takes you to a place, and so it can literally cause you to stop the conversation, to cut communication, because when the individuals determine, uh, when they determine what you have to say really is of really no value to them. When they make a determination that, well, I really do not want to hear this, so I wish you would just stop talking to me because right now I just want to do me. I just want to do my own thing. So I am really not paying you any attention. Well, it causes the other individual to go into a mode of, all right, then I will stop talking. When I look at and I think about how important it is to have the voice of God in our life and to be able to hear what God has to say in our life and speak in our life, because the Lord, he know the exact seed or the word that we need for our life each and every day, during each and every time of the day, whatever the situation, whatever the circumstance, whatever is going on, whatever the heartache, whatever the suffering, whatever the grief, whatever the heartbreak, it does not matter what our situation is. God has a word for us. But communication is a two-way street. Although God desires, and he will speak into the lives of his creation, he will speak to humanity, he will speak to his children, it is still our responsibility to express and to have a willingness to want to hear what God has to say. And there are times that many of us, we have found ourselves maybe at a crossroad in our life, and we may have prayed and we talked to God and we open up ourselves and we consulted with God and asked God for his wisdom, asked God for his understanding, asked God to give us a word, to give us the guidance and the direction that we need. Well, I know this has happened to me, and maybe you can attest that this has happened to you. That you may have prayed and asked God for his advice, for his wisdom. And the Lord responded back to you. And he gave you a seed. He gave you a word from his throne. Well, because that was not the word that you wanted, and because it did not come the way that you wanted it to come, then many times we may have chose to just disregard what God said, or just dismissed it and did not pay it any attention. And then we began to notice, as it talks about in the word, that even that which a person seemed to have, it should be taken away. In other words, many times we have experienced suffering, we have experienced loss, we have experienced defeat in our life because many of us, we do not hear good and we do not listen good. Anytime that you are truly listening, then you are in a position to be able to replicate, to produce, and to articulate what the sender of that message said to you. I remember many times growing up, my mother would send me to the store, and this has happened, I mean, whether we were in family or maybe in marriage or relationships, that maybe the person in your life may have asked you, can you pick this up from this store? They may have even asked, would you like for me to write it down just in case so you will not forget? And many of us, we have found ourselves in this position. It's like, no, I mean, you don't have to write it down. I got this. I will remember. Well, we may go to the store and the very thing that they needed, or maybe that we needed, picked up. It could be a vice versa situation. Well, when the individual goes, and because they did not maybe truly listen, maybe they got distracted, maybe their attention was shifted to something else, then they went to the store and maybe they may have picked up all these items, and they may have picked up maybe 2 or 3 items that you did not even ask them to get, and try to convince you, well, this is what you told me to get. And when they get back, you can show them the list. No, these are the things that I needed. How many times have we been instructed or given a word, and because we did not truly listen, we did not truly take it to heart, we did not allow it to get rooted and grounded down in our spirit, down in our soul, that the results that we were looking for, we could not experience positive results because we created the situation of not being a good listener, not being a good hearer. So we experience lack in our life. We experience chaotic situations in our life. We have experienced negative situations and negative results in our life. And then there are times that we can have the audacity to literally fault or to blame God because we are not good listeners and we do not hear good. We hear what we want to hear. We have pretty much selective hearing. But when we are truly open to the voice of God and when we are truly listening, hearing has to literally become an art. And when we are truly open to God, then we will be able to repeat back to God what he spoke into our life. I have seen this many times in relationships, in marriage, in personal relationships, where maybe the person in your life, and I know many times as males, we have dropped the ball and we have failed many times at this. The female in our life may have came and talked to us about something. Maybe at that particular time we were busy. We were consumed with whatever we were doing. And it may be concerning an event or something that is coming up, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm just using this as an example. And they asked the question that many females ask. Did you hear what I said? Are you listening to me? Now, we as males, we have been guilty of this, and it is something that we have to honestly own, and we have to work on this. Many times we may say, "Yeah, yeah, I heard you, I'm listening." Okay, so 2 or 3 weeks pass. That time comes up where it's time for the event. So the female in our life brings it back to our attention that, hey, we have this engagement, and we're sitting there like, what engagement? Well, I talked to you about this, and it was on such and such a day. You were wearing these color pants, you were wearing that color shirt. You were sitting there watching, the football game or the basketball game. I came in. I was actually, did you hear me? You replied, yeah, yeah, yes, I hear you, and so on and so forth. And many times, we as males, or we as individuals, not just males, but even females, sometimes we can say, even in our personal life, that we hear a person, or maybe even in business or in friendships, that we are listening to the other person, wherein really many times we may tell them something to appease them because we just really want to be left alone. Let me just do me. Let me do my thing. Sometimes we want them just to honestly, sometimes just be quiet. But when it comes down to using those same tactics with God, God will not excuse us and give us a pass and let us out of the expectations that He has for our life and what He desires out of us. It doesn't feel good, when you are talking to someone and you feel ignored. Think about the same situation we're in. Just imagine if you and I went to God and we have need and we have a situation and we are pouring out our heart and we are expressing ourselves to God, and God turns a deaf ear and He totally ignores us. And just imagine if God said to us, "I am just simply treating you the way that you treat me. The same way you do not have time for me right now, I do not have time for you." Then that would make us really feel some kind of a way. So it is very important that we take heed how we hear, because hearing determines response. As well as we have to be very careful, because in this eighth chapter of Luke, it talks about the sower and how the sower went and sowed the word. How the word, it fell on stony grounds and thorns and different places, even on good ground. We have to be careful about the things that we allow to be sown into our spirit, because hearing, it determines response. It will determine what you hear, whether positive or negative. It determines your vision, how your visual perception is of another person. It could determine emotionally how you feel about a person, because sometimes of the news that is brought, someone can come and bring you something that is maybe negative or maybe false about someone said this about you. It can cause you to feel some type of a way about another person, or they can give false information about that individual, and it can cause you to look at that person in a totally different way emotionally, as well as it can affect you mentally also, because it affects how you think and your thought process. You're thinking towards maybe that individual for the positive or the negative, as well as it affects our spiritual life. So may this devotional encourage you on today. Let us keep this in mind. Hearing determines response. And the only way to prove that we are truly listening to God is the results of being able to produce what God desires is going to be there. To prove whether we're listening to each other, we will be able to produce and articulate what is being said. Until next time, God bless you.